Menstrual activism is really, really important in putting pressure on governments, individuals, and civil society in providing greater access to sanitary products and also providing access to infrastructure, because you can't manage your period in a pit latrine. So menstrual activism is a holistic approach in managing our periods every month without economic and social obstacles.
When I heard there's a book on menstruation, I was like, okay, Women's Month, my ears are bleeding. There's definitely not enough conversations around this. After reading the manuscript and then the book, I was like, every person, every mom, every man, every son should be informed and know about this. Flow, it's a book about menstruation. So my experts are joining me today. I'm really lucky to have three amazing women who is part of Parent and Baby Brunch today. Not all of them are parents, but that's besides the point. All of them has got a story to tell around menstruation. And I'm just too excited that there's a book about this that informs you about everything around it. Candice, you go first. Who are you and why are you here?
I am Candice. I'm the Minister of Menstruation, as the people like to call me on the social medias. I am a menstruation activist, also an academic, and I'm also an author of the book, The Flow, about the book of menstruation. And I'm really excited to just talk about how we build a period positive world in South Africa, because I think oftentimes we don't talk about period poverty beyond the mental, the physical, and the political. So I'm really excited for the conversation today.
Claire, I adore you. Tell everyone what you do, why you're part of this, and why you're here.
Thanks, Ilana. So I'm Claire. I'm a psychologist. I work a lot with children, with teenagers, with young adults, and a lot with girls and a lot of transgender clients as well. So I'm here to try and expel some of the myths and to encourage open communication, open language. And I'm super, super excited to be having this conversation.
Now, Karen Jeynes, I am a fan of your written work. You have been the words of my mouth in several television shows that were produced that I got to be the presenter of. But you're not just a writer, you are on one of our previous podcasts. Please go and listen to it on babybrunch.co.za. It's called Flip the Script, where Karen didn't interview just her son, but her son got to interview her. And today you're joining us as well. Please remind us why you are here and also why you want to be part of this conversation.
Thank you, Ilana, for having me back. Yes, I'm a writer. I write a lot for TV, and I also write a lot for Africa Check and fact checking, and that's how I got into this topic of menstruation. I think it's something that we need to talk very clearly about, that we need to be able to have conversations about and arm ourselves and equip ourselves with facts and with knowledge and with openness. And yes, as well as being a writer, I'm also always trying to be an activist for parents. My kids have gone through a lot, their friends have gone through a lot, and often actually the biggest obstacle is parents needing to catch up, needing to be able to deal with difficulty, to be able to understand that their kids are maybe living in a different world to the one that they themselves grew up in. So I think we need to always be challenging parents that, because they love their kids so much, they need to get over their fears and be able to embrace everything that their children are dealing with. And in this case, menstruation.
Karen, what would you say this is a book about? Because I see in the book you share some of your own experiences. I particularly enjoyed the part where it talks about menstruation and intercourse, sex.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a book about demystifying menstruation, taking it out of the closet where it's been kept for so long and saying this is part of our bodies. This is something that happens to over half the world's population on a regular basis, and it affects so many aspects of our lives, from sex to school to the workplace, to our families and our relationships, and we really need to just talk about it.
Minister, I was surprised that there were so many pages in a book that could all be about menstruation and your period. And every page is really interesting. This for you is a book about?
advocacy, activism, and inspiring real life change in the household. I think for me, if I had this book when I started menstruating, I would have viewed my body very differently. I would have understood puberty very differently. I think my relationship with my body would be a very more self-loving one than a hating one, because I think oftentimes I saw it as awkward and I was afraid and I was scared. So for me, this book is really about the transition to allow young people to celebrate their bodies and embrace the process rather than being afraid of it.
Yeah, I want to just touch on what Candice was saying. You know, what we've said as a team often is that I wish I had this book when I was a teenager, when I started menstruating. It would have been amazing. So I'm so glad that we can offer this. So, you know, from a psych or psychology perspective is, you know, there is a lot of this anxiety and the shame that goes with menstruating. You know, we feel like, oh, I've got to hide it. I can't tell anybody. No one should know that I'm menstruating. It's got to be this big secret. And my philosophy, my wish from this is that we get rid of that notion. You know, let's talk about it. Why don't we talk about it? We need to talk about it.
What's often hard for parents is I think that we have a tendency to want to protect our children. You know, it's a natural thing as a parent, you want to protect your child. And often that's sort of like people want to protect their innocence. So, oh, they're so little. I don't want to tarnish that or whatever else, you know, because in our heads, these things around puberty, it's all tied up with sex. It's all tied up with all the stuff that we don't want to think of in relation to our children. We don't want to. And so what happens is, like Candice is saying, she read that when it was too late. You know, what happens is we're not actually empowering them and equipping them and preparing them in a non-scary way for, look, this is going to start happening as you get older. These are things that are going to happen. And so then it happens without them knowing what's going on, and that's scary and that's overwhelming, and then we tell them too late, because then we're like, oh, okay, now they're 14, 15, now we can talk to them about sex, and it's like, that's too late now. You know, they needed to have those conversations earlier on. And I think we need to be so aware as parents that words matter a lot to our children. They cling onto things, they remember things. You know, there's stories in the book from parents or from people talking about their own menstruation, saying, you know, oh, my mom joked when I was 6 that I was going to have to pay for my own menstrual products, and I spent 5 years worrying about that and how I was going to pay for that, you know. Or, oh no, that's a secret, you don't want to know about that, that's, you know, oh no, it's a terrible thing, it's a curse, it's all these things. And we build that and we model that for our children. And if we model that this is a healthy thing, this is a great thing, this is part of your journey as a human, and this is so exciting, and we model and lead it that way, then we're able to take away some of that fear and take away some of that those clashes that happen so often between parents and kids, because it's coming from fear and a lack of knowledge and a lack of trust, I think.
You know, it's so interesting because sometimes we look back and say, my parents made so many mistakes, right? But now that we are parents, we're making other mistakes, you know, we're making new mistakes. So also having said that, may we understand that our parents came from a point of view where they also didn't know. And that's why it's wonderful that you've created this guide that from what does your bra look like, to how do you wear your panty, to how do you insert a tampon, to my favorite section in the book, which says, how do we know something is right and how something is wrong? Because here's the thing, growing up in my community, if you had your period, it was said, oh yeah, say sick, she's sick, which means you're ill, you know? And Minister, do you want to take me through that? I mean, the something is right and wrong. What can we take out from that? And what do you want to say to parents and people watching this and listening to this podcast?
So I think why that section was important is because oftentimes I tend to get a lot of questions about, is it normal that my period is this, or is it normal that I'm experiencing this form of period pain, or is it normal that this and this and this? And I think this chapter alone is really just about equipping the readers, menstruators, non-menstruators, about when something feels right with your body in terms of your cycle, diarize it, keep track of your cycle. But then if there's something that's out of norm, so you experience that, you see like orange blood for some weird reason, then make use to go and see a doctor. I think we often view doctors in relation to sexual and reproductive health as firstly very expensive and also very distant, because we are often told as menstruators that, if we experience pain or if we're experiencing any form of other period symptom, we should just get over it. That's our period. That's what's expected. And so that chapter alone is really just allowing people to advocate for themselves, to know and equip themselves with certain things to say, if you experience this form of discharge, then you should see a doctor. Experience this type of pain, you might have this. Because oftentimes people are always freaking out about their periods because they don't know what is normal. So for me, I think that chapter alone just speaks true to every person who menstruates. No matter how young, how old, there's always something that you need to learn about your period. And as you grow, there's always something that you can be like, oh, I've actually experiencing this. I didn't know about this. He has this chapter that talks about it. So that's why I love that chapter. It's really important and powerful.
I want to get to this. Final thoughts and why we should read the book. Karen, over to you.
I think we should read this book because what I discovered when writing it was that everybody wants to talk about it. Everybody from 10-year-old girls to 80-year-old men to my teenagers to my mother to I had conversations I'd never had before. I learned things writing this book that I didn't know. And I think we should read this and just feel so, happy and empowered and able to help other people.
So I'm going to hop on with what Karen said and just agree with all of that. I think it's such a beautiful book and a beautiful way to learn more. And I also learned so much through writing the book, through reading it, through collaborating. And it's helped me grow as a person, as a therapist. And I found myself opening the conversation a lot more with my teenage girls about menstruation and about their periods. And it's also what I love is that it's not just for women. Single dads, this book is amazing for them because it teaches them so much. They don't have to be so scared to talk about menstruation, to talk about tampons, pads, all of that. So this book is a necessity as far as I'm concerned.
I will take this opportunity to address the menstruators and non-menstruators of the Republic of South Africa and greater beyond. I'm going to be very ministerial in saying this book is an opportunity to establish the period positive world that we've all been calling for. It's an opportunity to put extra pressure, in particular in our government, in ending period poverty. It's also an opportunity for non-menstruators, for men who want to understand more about periods, to know about how it happens, what they can do, how can they be better partners, and how they can send more e-wallets whilst we're menstruating, because I appreciate e-wallets whilst I'm menstruating. So it's just really just an opportunity to learn, to empower, educate, and just call for greater advocacy in our world. And yeah, I think it's all about just being open and talking more about periods, period.
Love this. You are superstars, and so is the book. Details on our social media platform about how you can follow these amazing writers, contributors, superstars, superheroes, ministers, and people who are helping other women understand their bodies, but most importantly, educating the world on something that is just so normal that most of us have got right now. Ladies, thank you for your time.